Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another segment of the Educational AD Podcast. We're going to be right back with today's guest, but as always, we want to give a shout out to our podcast partners. Now, don't hit that fast forward button. These are all companies that I either used as an AD or I've got a direct connection to. So take the next 3 minutes, listen to our shout outs, and then listen to our segment. When we're all done, go and visit these sponsors. I'm telling you, you're going to be glad you did. Here we go. We want to say thanks to Huddle for their support of the podcast. Go to huddle.com and change the way you see the game. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but as an athletic director, I wanted a platform that was going to work for all of our teams, and Huddle came through like a champ. Our coaches, our athletes, even our parents just loved all the tools that Huddle provided that allowed our kids to be coached at the highest level. Join the 8 million users. Go to huddle.com. Turn your school into a Huddle school. We also want to say thank you to Gipper. Go to gipper.com. Let their team help you create world-class marketing content for your school's social media channel. It's going to help you promote your teams and celebrate your athletes. Gipper's used and trusted by over 4,000 high school and college programs across the country. It's professional graphic design made simple. That's gipper.com. We also want to say thanks to Home Campus. Home Campus is a platform that you will use every single day. Things like scheduling, student athlete eligibility and clearance, uploading rosters, communicating with your stakeholders, you name it. Home Campus does it better, does it faster. It's going to provide you with a lot more extra time on your hands. To get started, all you have to do is go to homecampus.com. That's homecampus.com. We'd like to say thanks to Sideline Interactive, indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com. Schedule a live web demo to see their score tables and their scoreboards in action. Their products not only generate income for your athletic department, but they also create the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. That's sidelineinteractive.com. We'd like to thank Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. Go to hometownticketing.com. It's digital ticketing that offers more support, more security, more customization. Go to hometownticketing.com. They'll help you make the best online ticketing solution. We also want to thank Vital Signs Wall of Fame. If you're looking for a really cool way to display your school record boards or your school's Hall of Fame, go to vitalsignswalloffame.com. They're interactive touchscreen, that's right, touchscreen video consoles are just what you're looking for to bring your program alive. You can also share your unique history along with your proudest moments. The website's vitalsignswalloffame.com. We want to say thanks to Snap Raise. Have you ever spent weeks and weeks with a fundraising platform and ended up with really nothing to show for your return? Stop right here. Go to snapraise.com. Hands down, the best online fundraiser out there. We used it at our school with tremendous success. Coaches loved it. Our parents loved it. It works. Go to snapraise.com. Check out their other great platforms. But if you're looking for a fundraiser, you found it right here. Snapraise.com. We want to take a moment and say thank you to the Ohio University Online Master of Science in Athletic Administration. This affordable 20-month online program focuses exclusively on interscholastic athletic administration. And when you finish, you're not only going to have your master's degree, you're going to have 11 NIAAA leadership courses under your belt that can go toward your RAA or your CAA. You're also going to be part of a tremendous network of graduates across the country in K-12 athletics. To get started, it's so easy. All you have to do is go to ohio.edu/info/MAA, the Ohio University Masters in Athletic Administration. And we want to thank Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. If you've never used a survey to take the pulse of your student athletes or your parents, you're really missing out. Athletic directors already hear back from the complainers, the gripers, but that's only about 2% of your stakeholders. Athletic surveys will connect you to that group, but they're also going to connect you to the 98% that support your program. And that information is tremendously valuable, especially when you're talking with a frustrated parent or your principal or even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. Get started today. Let them help you take your athletic program from good to great. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Educational AD Podcast. It's one of our back to college episodes. We're going to be visiting today with Dr. Melissa Weinsz. She is tremendous athletic background, but she's currently the director of student athlete development. We're going to hear more about that at a little place called LSU, Louisiana State University. Full disclosure, we're recording this on April 2nd. So it's the day after the LSU Iowa game. There's a little bit of mourning going on in the LSU athletic office. But Dr. Melissa Weinsz, thanks so much for joining us on the Educational AD Podcast.
Jake, thanks so much for having me today. Super appreciative to be here.
Well, you and I were talking before we came on. I think you commented on one of our previous episodes, and well, who is this person? I checked your background. I said, we got to get her on the podcast. So thanks again for joining us at this challenging time for you. We always like to let our listeners have a chance to get to know our guests. So give us that quick bio, where you were born, where you grew up, maybe take us up through your own high school and your college days, because I know you were a college athlete. Then we'll take a break, but what's the Melissa Weinsz origin story?
All right. So best place to start, Midwest woman, born and raised from North Canton, Ohio, spent most of my young adult life there and wouldn't trade that for the world. Went to Denison University for college to play basketball and lacrosse, but before that I was trying and playing every possible sport in northeastern Ohio. So track, swimming, whatever my parents could get me into to try. I was loving it and I was doing it. So wanted to be associated to sports for as long as I possibly could. But fell in love with basketball and the AAU system coming up through high school. It got me good. And it thankfully introduced me to the possibility to play at a collegiate level, which I didn't even think could be possible. So moseyed my way on down from North Canton, Ohio to Denison University in Granville, Ohio. Very small Division III school, was very adamant about playing sports, and at that point in my life I was still very soft-spoken, shy, like I needed a smaller school to help me become the woman that I am today. So at Denison, I played two sports. I was able to work in the athletic training room for my major, which was athletic training. And then I also had exposure to working in a weight room while I was there. So more of the physical performance, prowess side of things. And immediately fell in love with that. And then I also had a chance to be involved in Greek life and a bunch of different organizations on campus, as you can at a D3 level when you're playing sports. And I knew that that's the industry and the field that I needed to stay associated to upon graduation. So as soon as my lacrosse season ended in the spring of my senior year, I was like, holy smokes, what do I do next? I have literally no idea who I am or what I'm doing. And I didn't even know that the field of athlete development existed at that point, or that there were people in these departments in current roles to help athletes with the transition out of their sport and talk about that identity development. So at that point, I was like, okay, well, I know I like working in a weight room. I know I love physical activity. So I think I want to be a collegiate strength conditioning coach, because I love the concept of periodization and building programming, seeing that progression and the intensity that came with a weight room. So I went to the University of Florida to pursue my master's in applied physiology and kinesiology. Wanted nothing to do with research, so I was like non-thesis, master's program, like right into working in the industry. And while I was at University of Florida, I had the chance to shadow and work in the weight room there. I had the chance to work in nutrition there, and I also connected with some sports psychology consultants when I was there. So when I say like I was able to get the holistic picture of what an athlete experienced, whether that was being one at a Division III level, and then looking at all the different support services that surround them, I had the exposure and opportunity to do that through graduate school. So I was in my master's degree for applied physiology, still thinking about becoming a collegiate strength coach, and I had to take elective classes at the University of Florida for my program. And that's where I discovered what athlete development was. And I was like, holy smokes, what is this? I need to get involved. Let's do it. So I emailed the professor of that class and I was like, you don't know me yet, but like, I'm about to change the field forever. And he said, absolutely. Like, come join me in my lab in our doctorate program and let's see what you got. And I was like, I have literally zero research experience. Are you sure I'm ready for this? And he liked my writing samples for my class submissions. And I'd like to thank I'd like to thank my liberal arts degree at Denison helping me with analytical thinking, writing, all of those things. So he said, yeah, let's give it a shot. Let's see what you got. And I fell in love with it. Oh my gosh, I fell in love with it. I love connecting with and helping people, and the fact that I could turn that into a profession is such a blessing. So decided to stay 4 more years at the University of Florida. As soon as I finished my master's, slid right into my doctorate and graduated in 2020. And by the grace of God, a position opened up at LSU as an assistant director of what we call Tiger Life, which is the life skills program. Applied for it, and within about 3 to 4 weeks later, I found myself in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So, little little venture down from the Midwest to the South, but it has been quite a journey.
Wow. I just love hearing the stories. And we're going to talk about all things LSU in a minute. I want to go all the way back to high school. You mentioned you did a lot of sports, and then, your words, you got bit by the AAU bug.
Yep.
Um, so when you were in high school, did you still do those other sports, or did your travel basketball coach say, "Oh no, you got to play basketball year round"?
So that's a great question. I honestly did not feel the obligation or responsibility until my junior year, because playing AAU basketball, I injured my ankle during a very important part in our lacrosse season in the spring. So I was like, yo, like I need to have or just be intentional about the responsibility I have to these teams. Like I can't be running myself thin and hurt myself. During respective seasons. So going into my senior year, I was very intentional about playing basketball in the fall and winter, and then as soon as spring hit, I didn't play AAU. I focused on just lacrosse because I had the really unique opportunity to go play both at my next level in college. So my coaches were phenomenal in high school. They said, play whatever you'd like to pursue and try, and just make sure that you stay up with conditioning and working on sport specific skills, and you're good. They also knew that my work capacity sometimes got me in trouble because I didn't know when to stop. So I was always the one that was in the gym longer or conditioning as much as I could, so that they really weren't truly too concerned about me. But really, it's only when injury was integrated into the situation, that's when my coaches were like, well, you got to be careful.
So, I mean, to hear you say that as a student athlete, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but you used the word responsibility. We don't often hear that. So you felt a responsibility to be there for your high school program.
Mm. Yes, I definitely did. And honestly, Jake, that came from the culture that the coaching staff created. Like they made a family, they made an environment to where you felt like you were important and you really truly did belong and that you made an impact. So out of respect for my coaches and my teammates, I was like, I got to make sure that I'm healthy so that I can provide in whatever way that I need to for the team. I was never the most talented one on the court, but I was always the one that was gonna try to get the most rebounds or play the hardest defense. So I knew I could contribute, but I just had to stay healthy.
Well, that sound that you hear is our listeners, our ADs and coaches applauding about that type of character makeup, the responsibility to the team. Good stuff. Let's go and jump ahead to Denison. You're a two-sport athlete coming in from the high school setting. What was your mindset? I can kind of guess, but were you gosh, I don't know if I'm ready for college, or were you coming in, hey, I'm ready, bring it on?
Oh, great question. I was so lucky that the group of women that I was joining at the college level, I met them during my recruit visit. They're all super inclusive and they were just excited. They're like, let's get you here, let's do this. Come to open gyms as soon as you get to campus. And then also, too, both my parents went to Denison. So I was familiar with the campus. I knew that I was only an hour and a half away from home. I knew that my parents were nearby if I needed them. So it wasn't a big, really, truly scary move. So I felt very comfortable with the campus already. I knew that the people that I was going to meet with were wonderful. And I was working hard and conditioning all summer so that I could come in and do whatever I could prove as a freshman. So I was ready for it.
Looking back, because your career, the trajectory has just been, up and up and up, high school, college, and now post college. Um, can you think of a moment, maybe in high school, maybe it was in college, that at the time it didn't seem like much, but now looking back with experience and perspective, you can say, hey, that was a big moment for me. Anything come to mind?
Yes. I'm trying to think about how to word this. So in high school, I my basketball coach was very intense, but he was an incredible man, and his fire and intensity is almost quite the exact opposite of my demeanor and how I connect with people. So that was a quick learning curve for me to figure out how to play appropriately for this coach. But there's one day in practice where I was not playing defense the way that he needed me to. I was not turning my hips and sprinting. I kept shuffling and crossing my feet. And he's like, Melissa, out of my gym. Get out of my gym until you figure it out, and then you can come back whenever you're ready. And then right after me, he kicked out the team captain on the team. And she consoled me and said, his attention and tough love is not because he doesn't think that you can get the job done. It's because he sees a lot of leadership potential in you. And from there on out, I really truly understood that it's not the tone in which it's delivered. You have to pay attention to the message that's behind the words. So that helped me exponentially, not only my playing career, but also working at an institution to where SEC athletics, Division I athletics in particular, particularly in this day and age, it moves fast. Like you cannot and should not be sensitive to words that that you receive, but you have to be ready and willing to move forward quickly with whatever message is delivered to you. So that situation where I was kicked out of the gym reminded me that I deserve to have confidence in myself and that I have a lot more competence than I realize. So,
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. Boy, it takes me back as a football coach. That
mhm.
was kind of my demeanor. I mean, just high energy, loud volume. But I
Yeah,
remember I would tell the players, don't hear me, listen to me. Okay. And
yeah,
I tried to, and I tell my assistants, hey, let me know if I'm not doing this. I would try to yell encouragement. I would try to yell instruction, not, and I would tell my football coaches this as an AD. If I ever hear you saying this, I'm going to fire you. I would never say, come on, you got to block, or come on, you got to tackle. Oh, no kidding. Okay. Teach them how to block, teach them how to tackle. So that's what we tried to do, is give them tools. But for me, it was always at high volume. Now in spring and track, I was much quieter, just doing teaching technique. Anyway, enough about me. Our guest today, Dr. Melissa Weinz. She is the Director of Student Athlete Development at Louisiana State University, LSU. We're going to hear about that and more. Let's go and take our first break. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to say thanks to our good friends at Huddle for their support of the podcast. Go to huddle.com and change the way you see the game. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years, but when I became an athletic director, I wanted a platform that was going to work for all of our teams, and Huddle came through like a champ. Our coaches, our student athletes, even our parents just loved the tools that Huddle provided that allowed our kids to experience sports at the highest level. Go to huddle.com, join the 8 million users, and turn your school into a Huddle school. We also want to say thanks to Gipper. Go to Gipper.com. Start creating world-class marketing content for your school's social media channel. It's going to help you promote your teams and celebrate your athletes' accomplishments. Gipper's used and trusted by over 4,000 high school and college programs. It's professional graphic design made easy. How easy? Well, it's so easy, even I can do it. Go to Gipper.com to get started. We also want to say thanks to Home Campus. Home Campus is a platform that you're going to use every single day. Things like scheduling, student athlete eligibility and clearance. Who doesn't do that every day? Communicating with your stakeholders, uploading digital forms and rosters, you name it. Home Campus does it better, faster, and it's going to provide you a lot of extra time. To get started, this is what you have to do. Go to homecampus.com. That's it. Go to homecampus.com. Welcome back, everybody, to the Educational AD Podcast. Once again, our guest is Dr. Melissa Weinsz. She's the Director of Student Athlete Development at LSU. Melissa, you mentioned, University of Florida, you immediately got sucked into, a master's program and your PhD. Congratulations on that, incredibly challenging. But I know you also were juggling internships and jobs and things like that. Can you share a little bit with our listeners what that was like?
Absolutely. Honestly, Jake, it was pivotal for my professional and personal development. I was super, super blessed to be pursuing internships during a time to where they actually started to be paid internships, as opposed to previous internship history within particularly the industry of athletics. So I had an internship at the end of my master's program. It was required for course credit, and I worked for a company called Exos, Strength and Conditioning. And they work a lot with draft prospects, but they also do something with the trust through the NFLPA. So exposure to that internship where I was working as a strength conditioning coach also showed me what athlete development looked like in practice, because the whole trust organization is built on facilitating that holistic support and development for retired professional athletes. So if it was not for that experience through that internship, I would not be doing what I am doing today or be aware of what athlete development is. So as soon as classes were done in the spring, I was headed off to whatever internship it was going to be next. And applying for these internships while I was teaching and then also completing coursework for the University of Florida was a little bit taxing, to say the least. But every single summer, there was an internship that I was pursuing or being exposed to as many parts of the industry of athletics as I possibly could. So Exos was my last strength and conditioning internship, and then I pivoted to IMG Academy, to where I was a leadership coach for a summer where we talked about different character development topics. And then I also worked for USA Football, where I assisted in the educational development of their football development model. I mean, any other educational curriculum they put online. And then I started work for the University of Florida over the summer as well in their student athlete enhancement department. And then I was like, this is it. I have reached the Mecca. This is what I want to do. And then I worked for them in the summer as a volunteer, which led to my postdoc position with them for a year before I came to LSU.
Now, they all sound fascinating. I want you to talk about your USA football experience. First of all, I'm going to throw a name at you. Did you get a chance to work with Candace Mitchell at all?
Candace Mitchell. I do not believe so.
Okay, don't worry about it. Okay, let's
Okay.
hear about your experience with USA
Okay.
football. What
I worked
sticks out about that today?
I worked with Michael Kruger, who was in charge of all education and development. He was exceptional. I'm not sure if you know him, but what sticks out about that is that was my first time working with a governing body of any type of sports organization. So I didn't have like one-on-one contact with athletes in this role. It was more so communicating with coaches, talking about policies, building education, building out that football development model that we wanted to implement at all these different institutions or high schools. I had no idea what that looked like, and I'm super thankful for that exposure and that experience, because that solidified even more for me that I'm built for the one-on-one connectivity opportunities. But I did love the concept of creating and developing these intentional policies and utilizing the best brains in the room can really truly make a difference on the ground level when you are working with student athletes.
Now, as you look back on those days, I'm going to ask you the same question that I did where you shared your experience with your high school coach.
Okay.
Um, from those internships, where you're working as a grad student, okay, and then you're doing the internship and everything in between. Is
Mhm.
there a moment that now it really sticks out as, hey, that was a pivotal moment for me?
Yes. So when I was at Exos, and like I talked about before, my demeanor is a little bit softer, not as fiery and aggressive, but I kept trying to like work my way into the strength conditioning industry where you need to have that more like boisterous demeanor. You need to have that high energy. So when I was at Exos, I had the opportunity to work with the general population, then also some collegiate student athletes while I was there. And I had the most incredible mentor, Joel Sanders. He was amazing. He talked to me a lot about the strength of your voice isn't necessarily how loud you project it. And he found a space for me in the Gen Pop, particularly in one-on-one settings and working with clientele in that way, to where I was able to like really make an impact and work with a lot of different clientele in an impactful way. So he saw the different strengths that I had and he didn't diminish them at all. And he said, how can we help you get uncomfortable and build your voice, not be so like mousy in a large group of people, but still realize that you deserve to be confident in whatever space that you're in. So he pushed me to work with groups of 30 plus people in general pop classes, but he also put me in spaces to where he knew I would excel. So, and I've taken that lesson and I implement that now with different student workers and graduate assistants within our department. So, figuring out their skills, what are they nervous and scared about, and how can I put them in a position to where they feel like they are comfortable and confident in completing those roles.
Boy, that sounds like a really cool job, working with that next generation of leaders, which, you're part of yourself. Okay. Let's go and take another break. But when we come back, we're going to take a deep dive into all things LSU and student athlete development with our guest, Dr. Melissa Weinz. So let's take that break, but we're coming back. This is the Educational AD Podcast. We want to thank our good friends at Sideline Interactive indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and you can schedule a live web demo to see their score tables and their score boards in action. Their products not only generate income for your athletic department, but they also create the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. That's sidelineinteractive.com. We want to thank Hometown Ticketing for their support. Go to hometownticketing.com. They're the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. Hometown's team is going to show you how you can set up and sell your tickets online, not just for athletic events, but things like school plays and concerts, school dances, even graduation. And here's the best part. Every school gets assigned a dedicated client success manager that's going to provide you hands-on support every step of the way. That's every step of the way. Go to hometownticketing.com. It's digital ticketing that offers more. We'd also like to say thank you to Ohio University's online Master of Science in Athletic Administration. This affordable 20-month online program focuses exclusively on interscholastic athletic administration. And when you finish, you're not only going to have your master's, you're going to have 11 NIAAA leadership training courses under your belt that can go towards your RAA or CAA designation. You're also going to be part of a nationwide graduate network with connections in athletics across the country. To get started, all you have to do is go to ohio.edu/info/MAA, the Ohio University Masters in Athletic Administration. Welcome back, everybody, to the Educational AD Podcast. Melissa, we've introduced you as the Director of Student Athlete Development at LSU. So, in some broad brushstrokes, tell our listeners, what you do, why it's important, and then we're going to take a deep dive. But what is student athlete development at LSU?
Jake, I want to be transparent. My internet just cut out there for a second. So I heard you say introduce student athlete development and what you do. Anything elaborated on top of that that you want me to address?
It wouldn't be a podcast if we didn't have an internet issue. Usually
Right.
it's my Central Florida internet, so I'm glad Louisiana is having some challenges. Um,
Yeah.
Share with our listeners
Okay.
kind of the what, what is student athlete development and why is it important? What does it include for you as you're
Mhm.
working with these student athletes?
Okay. So, in order to understand student athlete development better and what that department entails, I think it's really important to address the concept of student support services. So that is a big umbrella that a majority of Division One institutions utilize. So within the student support services, there are three different pillars. There is academic advising. So we have those individuals that help help student athletes schedule their classes and make sure that they graduate on time and that they're academically eligible for their sport. There's also learning specialists. Those individuals they assist with content specific education, help student athletes one on one with classes, and address any type of learning disabilities student athletes might have, and help make sure that they have a development plan in place. And then there's student athlete development. So those are the three support pillars under student athlete support services. So within student athlete development, we handle all things that are not addressed in academics, like the other two pillars, and then also not addressed in athletics. So that is all life specific things. So when you think about all the different things that you'll experience in your college career outside of academics and athletics, we got your back and we can help you with that. So we have four different pillars within our department. That is professional development. So that encompasses financial literacy education, career development assistance. So applying for internships, resumes good to go, LinkedIn, figuring out what your next step is. Also life skills is within professional development. So how do you change a car tire? How do you jump a car battery? Should we take a self-defense class? We can also help all of our student athletes with those things. And then we also talk about identity formation. So what's important to you? What are your values and beliefs outside of your sport? And how can we make sure that we're integrating those things into daily practices? And then also a career that you pursue upon graduation. So that's just professional development. That's one pillar. Another pillar is community service. Baton Rouge is continuously pouring into this institution. So we have to make sure that we're also pouring into our community too. So we meet with both teams to help them plan community service initiatives and also one-on-one with student athletes to help them plan initiatives as well. So if they are super passionate about working with kids in a low-income area, we make sure that we connect them with any resources that they might need to make sure that they are engaged in community service opportunities. We also plan all athletic department-wide community service initiatives too. So we work with all 500 plus student athletes, and then also sometimes we help assist all 300 plus staff members in athletics as well. So community service is our second pillar. Third pillar is going to be diversity, equity, inclusion, or now engagement and inclusion. So all education provided is not necessarily mandated, but it is an expectation that all staff and student athletes are engaging in some type of programming for engagement and inclusion at LSU. So that is where we meet a lot of staff and student athletes where they are. So we have a progression of listen, learn, and act. So we're not expecting you to go out and advocate in the community immediately, but we do want to provide educational content for you to make sure that you're learning about different, whether it's minority populations, whether it's different individuals with abilities and needs. We are addressing all different things, diversity and inclusion for our student athletes. And then we also have leadership enhancement, so two student leadership organizations. So we have the Student Athlete Advisory Council, and then we also have the Black Student Athlete Association. The Student Athlete Advisory Council is a nationally recognized organization through the NCAA. So we have student athletes from LSU that go and attend different meetings and committees for the NCAA, and then they also help implement different policies here on campus. So it's kind of like student government, but for student athletes. So we talk to them about what different skills do you garner in your sport, and then how can we make sure that you are still enhancing and building on those skills and weaknesses and being able to articulate that to employers when the time comes. So we've got professional development, we've got community service, diversity, inclusion, and leadership enhancement. We do a lot. Oh, Jake, you're on mute.
I am a professional podcaster and I need to unmute myself. Um, I was going to say that's so cool. And I just look back to my own time as an undergraduate student and just thinking, then this was 100 years ago. It would have been really cool to have something like that.
Mhm.
Can can you share a couple of I'll call them success stories where you worked with a undergrad student athlete and you've seen some growth in them through their participation in the program. You don't have to give us any names or anything, but uh, anything come to mind?
Oh my gosh, yes. So we have something called the Summer Academic Success Program. That's when we have the opportunity to meet with all first year students and incoming students at LSU so that they get exposed to what does life look like when you're transitioning into college. And during that program, Tiger Life specifically does something called an identity wheel, where we talk about all the different parts of who we are as an individual and what's important to us. And we talk about allocating different sizes of this pie to fill up your whole wheel. And one student athlete in particular that I was working with, over 75% of their pie was athletes. They were not able to identify more about what was important to them, about who they were, what different values they had, but they just knew that they wanted to be here to play sports. And after habitually meeting with this individual at least once a month, and that we've done the pie measurement at least 3 different times, and he has now 5 different pieces of his pie. And the student athlete piece is definitely still prominent and it's there because we would never want to get rid of that piece of the pie because it's very important to him. But he's realizing he has all of these other things that are important to his life as well. So I was very, very, very proud of that student athlete to see how his pie has progressed because that should essentially help with his transition out of his collegiate career. So that's an immediate one that comes to mind.
Well, and that's so great, and I'm sure there's a lot more like that. Now, I'm going to ask a question, and it's probably going to come off very cynical,
Okay.
but it's probably a reflection of my age. Um, when I was done with high school sports, I knew I was going to college, small college, and I had an okay, college career playing football and running track. I even played a season of minor league football. It was very minor league football after graduation. But when it was over, I was already teaching, I was already coaching. I moved on. And it seems that nowadays, 45 years after I graduated from college, that there seems to be, it seems to be a thing that some young people, they have become so identified
Mm-hmm.
as an athlete
Yep.
that they find it difficult or challenging to transition into the next phase of their life.
Yep.
And to the cranky old guy on his front porch, I want to say, snap out of it. Come on, get on with your life. This is it. And I know that's not healthy in mental health and mental strength and all that stuff. So, um, why has that become a thing? I'm putting this all on you now.
Okay. Okay. That's a great question, and I completely understand why you're asking that. Particularly, playing at a Division 3 level, I knew that my sport wasn't gonna. I'm not gonna go play in the WNBA when I'm done with my basketball career. But still, at that point, like we talked about AAU as well, I had spent all my time, my energy, my friendships, my identity was wrapped up into that sport. That's what I love doing, and that's what brought me joy. So for someone to tell me, like, you can't do that anymore, you gotta find a new avenue, I'm gonna say, I don't know how to connect with people if I'm not doing rebounding drills and, working on different like plays and talking through X, Y, and Z and traveling to games together. How do I meet people? So that was a huge check for me too, even at the smallest level of college sports. So I can't even imagine what student athletes have to go through to get to this level at a Division 1 like SEC institution, what they're experiencing. And I'm not going to pretend like I'm going to understand all the different nuances of it. But what I do know is that I try to tell student athletes when they come into my office that the least interesting thing about you is that you play sports. And they've had people surrounding them their entire life telling them that that is where they bring value. to this world. Like you must perform and you must perform well if you want to be important. So student athlete development is a space to where we remind them that they are so much more than their sport.
Okay.
So
No, go
yeah,
ahead.
yeah. So there, that question or that comment when you say like, "I want you to snap out of it," that's written in literature. It's called something. It's called identity foreclosure. When you are completely committed to your sport, you don't want to explore anything else. It's called foreclosure. So a lot of student athletes experience that in their sport career transition, particularly if it's abrupt, if there's an injury. And then they're like, nope, you're medically retired. Now you're not coming to practice anymore and your scholarship's gone. Excuse me, what? But that it's a business. Like schools have to turn over. They have to fill that roster spot. They have to get someone that can fulfill that role. It is very intense. So it's tough. It's very tough. And not a whole lot of people have been around them up until this point in their collegiate career to say, or their athletic career to say, who are you and what's important to you outside of your sport.
Well, the example that you give right there, and again, I'm not trying to backpedal here, but having that catastrophic injury again at the
Uh-huh.
Division I level, it's so sudden.
Yep.
Absolutely, I can understand that. I guess what I'm referring to is, the rank and file player, whether it's D3 or
Yeah. Mhm.
D1. Okay, hey, it's you're going to college. Supposedly, you're getting a degree. And again, I don't want to diminish in any way the great work that you guys do. It's one of those things that when I first hear it, it's just going, well, come on. And I know that's why I'm not in it. I know that that's not the right approach to take.
Yeah. And it has to come a lot from the student athlete being intrinsically motivated to do something. They can't have all these external factors and forces telling them, come on, you got to do this. They have to be driven by curiosity. They have to be driven by a desire to figure this out. And that takes intentional relationship building before they can get there, right? So you have to tell them, hey, we have these resources. You need to start thinking about these questions. This is important. And it's difficult at that age, let alone to think about, hey, what do I want to do next? I still don't even know what I want to do. And I'm 30 plus years old. So, it takes time and it's tough at that age to expect them to know, but that's why we have student athlete development departments in place to help.
No, and again, that's another good point. Everybody's different. Everybody's gonna, mature and find out, what they want to do at their own pace. Great stuff. Thanks for getting me back on track. Okay. Uh,
Works.
this has been really cool. I'm just so grateful that you agreed to come on the podcast, but we're not done yet.
Okay.
We always wrap up with what we call the athletic director's toolbox. Now, you're not an athletic director, but you really know your way around the world of athletics. We're going to take our final break. We're going to hear from Athletic Surveys, who sponsored this particular segment. And when we come back, I'm going to challenge you to send out a brand new athletic director on their very first job, but I'm only going to let you put 3 things in their toolbox. So
Okay.
let's hear from Athletic Surveys, and then we're going to find out what Dr. Melissa Weinz is going to put into her new athletic director toolbox. We'll be right
Okay.
back. We want to say thank you to Athletic Surveys for sponsoring the AD Toolbox segment of the podcast. Athletic surveys are a great way for you to collect comprehensive data from your stakeholders. You probably already hear from the complainers and the gripers, but that's really only a small percentage. Athletic surveys will connect you to them, but they're also going to connect you to the 98% of your stakeholders that support your program. And that's tremendously valuable information to have when you're talking to a frustrated parent or maybe a student athlete, or how about your principal or even your school board. Go to athleticsurveys.com. They're going to create a custom survey that lets you take the pulse of everybody in your program. That's Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. Check them out today. Well, it's that time of the podcast. We have been visiting, and it's been a great visit with Dr. Melissa Weinz. She is the Director of Student Athlete Development at LSU, has a tremendous background in athletics. And right now, I'm going to challenge her to send out a brand new athletic director on the very first job, but I'm only going to let her put 3 things in the toolbox.
Okay.
Dr. Weinz, what three tools are going to go into your new athletic director toolbox?
You ready for this, Jake? It's about to be pretty exciting. So the first thing I would say is a candy jar. So when I talk about the cornerstone of building relationships and welcoming people into your office, whether it is student athletes and or staff alike, everyone likes a sweet treat. So they need that little pick me up in the afternoon. This is an excuse for them to slowly wander into your office, and maybe the first time they just pick out one and they go, but then they start hanging around a little bit longer. You can start asking them questions. You learn about their favorite candy. You learn why that's their favorite candy. That conversation just flows into all other life things. And they start to recognize that you are a safe space where they can consistently and reliably find not only their candy, but also someone that they can confide in. So make sure you got a candy jar on the edge of your desk, wherever you may be, or some type of sweet treat to share with people around you, because everyone needs a little pick me up at the end of the day, particularly in athletics when things are moving at a million miles per hour. So make sure you have that candy jar. I would turn my computer to show you the next thing, but it'd be kind of difficult to do that. Plants. You need to have a plant in your office because a plant reminds you of not only self-care, but that you need to make sure that you are taking care of other entities outside of just focusing like on yourself. You need to water that plant. You need to make sure that you're getting rid of those dead leaves. You need to make sure that you give it light and that you help facilitate a strong and healthy life for this plant. Sometimes when I look over at my window and I see my succulents are dying, which is very hard to do, mind you, Jake, to kill succulents, I am like, whoa, I need to take a moment to stop. I need to take care of this plant and I need to get a moment for myself. So whether that is a plant or whatever type of self-care that you need to do, or any type of entity you need to have there to remind yourself to take care of yourself, you got to do it. Because if you don't take care of yourself, no one else is going to do it for you. Same with your plants. And then the third thing I would say is a whiteboard. Also, I would turn my computer as well to show you this. I have a massive whiteboard that takes up the entire wall in my office. Particularly for me, I have all the different months of the year on this whiteboard. So I can write down all the different programming that we have going on throughout the entire athletic department, and particularly within our student leadership organizations, because there are always meetings going on. So I need to see everything written out in order to make sure that I know I can stay organized. It also helps us with social media posting and a whole bunch of different entities within our department. So have a whiteboard to either map out and stay organized with your schedule, and or another exceptional way to utilize a whiteboard. I have another one back there too, covered by all the fake ivy. But student athletes come in and they write notes on my whiteboard, whether that's for me or other student athletes that will come into this space to share it. Words of encouragement. It just brings like more life to the space too. So having notes up there almost makes it feel a little bit more homey as well. So I would say whiteboard, plant, and candy jar.
I love them all. Anytime somebody mentions, self-care, their stock goes up in my eyes. And the way that you illustrated that with the plant, very, very unique. I dare say could be a brand new original tool. And I'm gonna have to go back and look in the archives.
Okay.
We might have had one person mention the candy jar,
Okay.
and although I didn't mention it, I had a candy jar on my desk for that very reason. And my
Yep.
go-to was the little tiny York peppermint patties.
Well, just so happens those are one of my favorite candies, so I'd have been
Boom.
stopping in your office all the time.
There's so many connections there. It's scary.
Mhm.
Um, Melissa, we should have done this earlier, but we're going to do it now. If one of our listeners wanted to reach out and add you to their network, and listeners, I think you have a tremendous resource here, or just pick your brain more about the student athlete development program, what's the best way they can get a hold of you?
LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. I love the initiative that it encourages people to take in regard to reaching out and networking. And if you take a moment to send me that personalized message with your friend request or connection request, that is very important to me. So drop a little note in that message, and please feel free to reach out to me at any time.
Well, that's exactly how you and I connected. Well,
Exactly. Yep. And here
uh,
we are. Hmm.
well, thanks so much for sharing with our listeners. We are definitely going to have to get you back on a future episode of the podcast, and all the best moving forward with LSU.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I loved the conversation today and look forward to talking again soon.
Oh, you bet. Absolutely. For listeners, we appreciate you tuning in. And just a reminder, we upload the Zoom recordings to the Educational AD Podcast YouTube channel. We do this just about every day with full interviews and shorter segments. All we try to do is share best practices. So we hope you come back for the next episode of the Educational AD Podcast. We'll see you next time.